Hi and welcome. I'm Samir Maisagar and I work as a developer engineer here at SquaredUp. Today we are going to talk about M365 and how you can optimize your end user computing with M365 reports and of course using SquaredUp. So this is the agenda for today. We will start with a quick introduction to the M365 suite and all the services that are covered under the suite. Now, as we go along, it will be apparent that data visualization or reporting in M365 is very non-central and fragmented experience that may be often due to the nature of the suite itself. With that in mind, we will take a quick look at what ways exist today, including the MS Graph API, to consume and share all this data or all these reports across all the services. Then using these reports, we will try to spot what optimization opportunities exist from the insights that these reports provide. And lastly, of course, we will take a look at how SquaredUp can help make the whole process easier with the native M365 plugin for us. So with that, let's get started. Now let's take a quick tour of what's actually included in the M365 suite, because as you know that it is quite extensive and it spans more than just the classic office apps that we use today. Now these services can actually be divided into a few categories based on what functions that they serve. So we've got starting with productivity and collaboration. And so we've got here tools like Copilot, or Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, Yammer, right? So these are all the tools that we need that help us connect, share, get the work together, get the work done together in our daily lives. Then next up are the Office apps. So these are the familiar tools, right? These don't need any introduction. This is the Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Office, Outlook, OneNote, that classic Office app suite. So you use this to create documents, crunching, numbers, or create any PowerPoint presentations or spreadsheets, manage your emails, manage your notes, and so on. Now, so for managing identity and access, we've got Entra ID. Right, so this was known as Azure AD not too long ago before Microsoft rebranded it to Entra ID. So this is basically Microsoft's identity and access management solution, making sure that only the right people have access to only the right assets, and also that Entra ID or Azure admins have a central pane of management for all across their users and their groups. Now, on the security and compliance front, we have got Microsoft Purview and the whole Defender for Defender suite. So Defender for M365 or Defender for apps, endpoints, identity, or cloud, so on. Right? There's a few variations for Defender. So Defender basically are the tools that help keep the data safe and ensure that we are meeting all the compliance requirements. And then finally, we've got device and app management in Tune, right? Again, that probably needs no introduction. This is where you manage your devices, push out applications, make sure that everything is up to date and compliant with the recent policies. So as you can see, M365 is a comprehensive suite that covers productivity, office apps, collaboration, security, device and management, device and app management tools as well. So it is quite a wide net. So as we now dive into the world of M365 reporting, one thing becomes clear pretty quickly, and that is that the reporting is anything but centralized. So if you want to check so for example, if you want to check usage and adoption for your Office apps, then you have to head over to the M365 admin portal. If you need compliance or security insights, then head over to the Microsoft Purview Compliance portal or the Defender XDR portal. For identity and access, then you have to jump into the Entra Admin Center or even the Entra ID service in the Azure portal. And if you're managing devices, Intune or Endpoint Manager or Defender Suite, this is where you go to, right? So There are challenges, and the main challenge being that the whole process or the whole experience is very fragmented. So what does this actually mean for us? Well, what it means is that getting a complete picture of your environment often feels like a scavenger hunt, so to say, right? So if you're just jumping between portals from clues to clues, if you want to access a certain type of data or a certain set of data, then you have to first find out what the right place for that data would be, and then you log into that portal, you find the right data, and then you consume, and then maybe you share it out. And so often this is what it feels like, right? So where do I go? Where do I start? Where is my data, right? So you know all of this data is being collected, and you know you should have access to it, but it's just, again, like I said, it's just a treasure hunt, a scavenger hunt for the data that you already have. But there's a hope. Um, there is a way, luckily, right? So you may have heard of MS Graph API. It is basically the central gateway to all your Microsoft M365 cloud data and beyond. So we've got MS Graph API on one side, and then you've got SquaredUp on the other. So with Graph API, you've got access to a variety of services, a variety of endpoints, each contributing or each able to fetch certain set of data from one of the Azure services. And then you've got SquaredUp, which is a unified dashboarding portal, which will help you to take that data and turn it into a unified, easy to understand dashboard, easy to share dashboards, and makes the whole process, the whole consumption of data quite easy. And when these two join forces together, then you get something that is amazing, right? You get the best of both worlds, powerful access to all your M365 insights, and a single pane of glass to visualize everything. Before we talk about the dashboard themselves, let's talk a little bit more about MS Graph API. I'm sure a lot of you have already heard of it, but just so that we are all on the same page. MS Graph API is actually a central gateway, like I said, to everything happening across M365 and beyond. Now, for example, whether you want to track Teams adoption from your Office apps, or if you want to monitor Intune devices that is coming from your Intune service, but if you want to keep an eye on Defender security incidents, again, that is coming from the Defender suite, it's all accessible together using the Graph, or rather Graph API. All you need to know is know the right endpoints. So these are just a couple of examples that are given. This list of API endpoints is quite extensive. Later at some point, I will show you how the whole API is structured and how you can find your way around the services that you need and finding the exact right endpoint for your need. But for now, just know that this is a centralized repository or a centralized database for all the APIs that you need for your reporting purposes. And now all of that is obviously accessed under this base URL, graph.microsoft.com. Again, I will show you in more detail what that looks like. And then talk about the SquaredUp M365 plugin itself. Right. SquaredUp has a native plugin for M365 that mainly leverages Graph API. Just to query the endpoints across a variety of services there and bring the data back together into the platform and build dashboards. Connecting to your M365 tenant is also quite easy. All you have to do is use the client ID and credentials using the OAuth2 authentication method there, right? So all of that is GUI driven in the data source itself. So all you need to know is those values, and you just copy and paste that in and connect. Of course, I will show that in the demo later. The plugin also comes with a bunch of out-of-the-box dashboards, and we are adding more and more as we go, because as you will see that the list is quite extensive, and we have to actually pinpoint the right endpoints and make sure that you get the most out of it. However, having said that, you don't really have to wait for us to add out-of-the-box dashboards in our collection. You can just create your own. Okay, that's enough talk. let's dive into SquaredUp and see for ourselves. Now, I will start by showing you the MS Graph API itself. And so you've got documentation here. I will share this link later. But you've got the comprehensive documentation here. So on the left, you can explore, get started, see what services and features are included in MS Graph so far. And these are all the endpoints. So we've got two versions, P 1.0 and API beta. 1.0 is basically the stabilized version for whatever is in beta. So when Microsoft adds new API endpoints, it will first be added to the beta reference. And once it gets stabilized after a few days, a few months, or whatever the timeline is, it will go be listed in the V 1.0 reference. So again, these are basically like 95 or maybe even more will overlap with each other. But if you want to get early access to whatever latest API has been released, then you can refer the beta reference. If you click on one of these, I'll go with the REST API beta reference. You'll see again here on the left, you've got a bunch of categories. So if I want to see reports for, let's say I will drill down into reports folder, go into 365 usage reports, and then maybe report root. You see now I've got a bunch of reports here or a bunch of folders containing reports for different categories, right? So if I want to see Office 365 activations, I will expand this and say, okay, get user detail. Now this endpoint will give me, here is the actual endpoint. So this is the HTTP request that you have to make. This is on top of the base URL that we saw earlier, graph.microsoft.com. You make a GET request. Since we are only retrieving data, we are not putting anything or posting anything. However, you can. So this is not only limited to getting data. You can also post data, delete data, put data, whatever, right? So you can do all the API operations here. Again, this documentation is actually quite helpful and quite extensive. You can see what permissions are needed, the query parameters that this API will accept, and even what the sample response of this API will be. And so this is actually quite comprehensive, and this is the base for a majority of data streams that we use in SquaredUp. Right, so let me show you the SquaredUp plugin. So as you can see, I've got my M365 plugin set up here already, and I've got a bunch of the out-of-the-box dashboards. So these will be imported at the time of connecting to your data source itself. So it does not take any further setting or configuration to import these out-of-the-box dashboards. You just have a toggle when you're creating or when you're connecting the data source itself. So this is just a list of dashboards that are there already, and a list of data streams. Data streams are basically each data stream will map out to each endpoint that will actually fetch out and collect data and bring it back to SquaredUp. So as you can see, you've got a bunch of data streams here already pertaining to Intune or Exchange or M365. OneDrive, Outlook, SharePoint, Teams, and so on. So let me actually show you how this is configured in the back. So if I just click on the edit button. So I just want to talk about the authentication first. There are two ways, Microsoft Entra ID. So this is where you can actually connect to your data source or your tenant using your actual user credentials, your username and password. But again, in production environment, we would not really recommend that because you don't want to tie all your dashboards to a single user account that is quite volatile, right? So in those cases, you will have to, or we recommend you go for client credentials. All you have to do is register an app in Azure or M365 admin portal. You will get these IDs, tenant ID, an application ID, and a client secret. You just copy paste that here. And if everything is well configured, if the permissions are all perfect, well set, then it will seamlessly connect to your and M365 tenant. And then this is for Intune support. If you're also using Intune, you check this box. This will basically import all the Intune data streams, Intune devices, as well as Intune out-of-the-box dashboards that I just showed you. Now let's take a look at a couple of these dashboards. So I've got license usage, Copilot usage, and activations here. So let's start with the license usage dashboard. This is actually one of the most popular use cases that we hear is for license usage, because licenses are expensive, right? Especially things like Copilot, as I'll show you one of the dashboards for Copilot. These licenses are expensive, and you don't want them to be just sitting around unused and being wasted. So you want to identify early which ones are being actually activated, which ones are being used, and which ones are just sitting there. So a dashboard like this will help you tremendously. So this dashboard is actually categorized or split into different services. So teams, we've got 85 licenses, only 84 of them are being used. That this one has not never been used. For Exchange, similar, we've got 108 licenses, 99 are being used, 9 are not. Same for OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, Yammer, and so on. So again, as you can see, this is an excellent view to see is like to identify how many of your licenses are just being unused and identify them early, and you can take a decision accordingly whether you want to revoke those licenses or you want to reassign them to other users. Now I talked about the Copilot usage, right? Copilot again is one of the biggest use cases that we have been hearing recently. For I think obvious reasons, everybody wants to use Copilot. Using Copilot is not only fun, but also increases your productivity quite a bit. But also it is expensive. Licenses are expensive, and you don't want to just purchase licenses to have them sitting around. So this dashboard here is actually showing you which ones of your users have the Copilot license allotted to them, what was their last activity with this license, and under which service, right? So Copilot is active across services, so in Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and so on. So which ones of these are actually being used? You can track adoption and usage here. Again, enable what is active usage trend, which users are using actively the Copilot license. You will see a dashboard like this. This is just a trend of Copilot being used. Thankfully, it is going up. These spikes, or rather these dips, are probably because of weekends, but we've got only a few dashboards, or rather only a few users using Copilot, but the adoption is steadily increasing, which is good to see. So again, with dashboards like these, you can easily track adoption and you can track usage, identify which licenses are not being used, reassign them, or revoke them. Now, obviously, if you want to see any other dashboards apart from these, again, this is not an exhaustive list. You can just create your own. So I have created a few dashboards already. So what you can do is you can use SquaredUp's web API tile that will give you a very nice, GUI-driven interface to connect to your M365 tenant exactly using the same method as OAuth2, like we saw earlier, and connect to your M365 tenant. And then you can start again, provided that you have got the right permissions and the right scope, etc. Then you've got ready access to the endpoints and bring that data back into SquaredUp and build dashboards. So the other way of connecting to M365 would be PowerShell tile that we have, similar to Web API tile, but this is PowerShell script driven. So all of this, you will write a nice PowerShell script and you will just run it on the cloud. There is no on-prem agent or nothing on-prem involved here. So you just run the script on the cloud. The script will it will authenticate to the endpoint first, and they will make a REST request against the API, get the data, maybe perform some logic or manipulation within the script itself, and then feed it back to SquaredUp, right? So you've got a couple of options that you may want to explore when you want to create your own dashboards by connecting to M365. So I have created a few of them already. This one, for example, is for Entra ID. This is giving me the logs of all the failed sign-ins across my applications. So in Azure portal, in the last 24 hours, I've got 2 failed attempts to sign in. In the OpenVPN cloud, we have got 6, and so on. And this one's giving me the most common reasons for failure. Unsurprisingly, invalid username and password is the number one, but you've also got a bunch of others. Defender for Office 365. So this is covering attack simulation, who are the offenders, what's the user coverage for attack simulation, tracing coverage for attack simulation, and so on. And then we've also got Windows Copilot. So if you're using Intune, you're also probably using Copilot Autopilot already. This gives you at a glance which devices have been imported, which ones are pending, which ones have encountered an error, how many are enrolled, which ones have not been connected, and some charts for devices by a certain property that may be manufacturer or SKU number or enrollment state or model number or whatever, right? So once the data is into SquaredUp, you can build dashboards on it as you like. Right, so that was the quick demo for the M365 plugin that we have and how we can leverage that to identify optimization opportunities. Again, like I said, that is not in a way a full picture of everything that you can do with SquaredUp and M365. The plugin itself is evolving and it will keep getting better and will incorporate more and more data streams and more endpoints to query and to dashboard. So these are just some opportunities that we saw in the dashboards that we can do. We can assess user adoption, like how many licenses are actively being used versus which ones have been allotted. Manage license allocation, like this one's, like I said, is the big one. End user device monitoring with Intune or Defender or endpoint manager, right? Things like that. And identifying security risks early before they become a problem. That's all I have to show you today. Thank you for joining. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. If you want any help with getting started with M365 or SquaredUp in general, we are happy to hear from you. I hope you enjoy all the rest of the sessions as well, and we'll meet again soon. Until then, happy dashboarding.